So again, I'm Lisa Whalen. I'm the mayor. Council members present are Pam Mortensen, here, Ann McGregor,
Here.
Kathleen Refkin,
Here.
John Chumperlin.
Here.
And staff present are our engineers, Allison Fauski.
Here.
Adam Gadpla.
Here.
Also our engineer with WSB. And then staff are Administrator Mike Baroni.
Here.
And Finance Director Brian Grimm.
Here.
Director of Administration Ali Palfus.
I'm here.
And our City Clerk Chris Lindquist.
I am here.
And Finance Director Brian Grimm.
I think that's the second time, but I'll say here again. Yes.
Okay. And hey, two is better than one, right? And Gary Peters, our Public Works Superintendent.
I am here.
The benefit of recording it too is just that I don't believe we have representation from everyone in the neighborhood, and so this will be posted onto the city's website. And at that time, any of your neighbors, if they're asking questions about the project, they weren't able to attend tonight's meeting, they can view, at least starting from this moment 30 seconds ago, our presentation tonight, which is really going to be the bulk of the important information. They can miss all that technical difficulties we were having at the beginning. But I'll go through my presentation. If there's something burning, a question that's burning and you want to jump in, that's fine by me. Otherwise, at the end, we'll kind of host a Q&A, and we just ask that people speak up. It'll be a little bit of a back and forth. We'll need to hear your name and address, and then we can talk about either a question or a comment that you might have. Next slide, Mike. Okay, so this is an aerial photo of the proposed project location, and if you squint, you might see your parcel identified on there, but the red line is essentially the project area. We've got all the roads except for Jennings Cove Road, that longer leg that goes down further south. The rest, including East Cove Lane, Upper Cove Road, and Cove Circle, are all proposed to be improved with this project. We can go to the next slide. So for some background, how does this project come about? The city of Minnetrista in general follows a capital improvement plan and a pavement management program that identifies project areas or roads and streets that are that need to be improved. And that might be, simple improvements. I got the ringing phone if you want to mute. That might be maintenance improvements all the way down to a rehabilitation or reconstruction project, which we're focusing on for your neighborhood. This general improvement plan focuses on many things. One of the big aspects that the council and city staff are focused on is improving the pavements and the roads throughout the city of Minnetrista. Really, the way we do that is we have a pavement condition index. It's a score for the road, and we're able to collect data by physically inspecting each street in the city, and we do that anywhere between every 3 to 5 years. And our inspectors, our pavement specialists, will actually rate these streets based on their age, what they witness in the field for the condition of the pavement. We'll talk about your specific streets, but they're looking for a number of transverse cracks which go across the road. They're looking for longitudinal cracks. They're looking for the pavement breaking up in certain places, which we call alligator cracking. And we actually have a program that will then basically produce a score for us. And we're able to group particular streets in together and form project areas. And so that's how we've come up with this Jennings Cove area. The other thing that we look at when we're planning for projects is the condition of the underlying public utilities, which I mentioned earlier. So we want to couple this the improvements to the street with improvements to what's underneath the street. And if we don't do that, what we might end up with is a utility failure after a street is repaired, and we're digging into a new pavement. And so we look at what's underneath the street. At the same time, we're looking at what you can see from standing up on the street. The process that the city follows with these projects, actually it follows a state statute. It's called State Statute Chapter 429. And basically that's a statute that allows cities to create an assessment policy and assess benefiting properties, which would be defined by that city's assessment policy as a property that's going to benefit in value from an improved roadway. And so this whole process follows a state statute. This neighborhood meeting is kind of above and beyond that. This isn't part of the requirement. But the first real design component is producing what's called a feasibility report. And that's going to be a report that puts together a detailed description of the existing conditions, the work that's proposed. It'll provide an estimate. It also lists all the benefiting properties and what the preliminary assessment amount is to those properties. And then of course there's a number of figures and appendices that go on that include all the engineering data that we've collected to generate the report. That report is then presented to the city council, at which time they would, if they're in agreement with what's in the report, order the project. And that would be at a public hearing. And then we'd start into the really detailed design where we're actually putting together the CAD design in AutoCAD. We're putting together the plans. We're also putting together the contract for when this project gets bid to a contractor. We can go to the next slide there, Mike. And then this one, if you want to just click through once, we've got a couple pictures that show up. Maybe, yeah, so if you just click again, there we go. We can stay here for a second. Talked about this a little bit, but now in general across the city, but here's a snip from just Google Earth of the street conditions on Jennings Cove Road. You can see right away that we've got patching here. We've got settled pavement. We've got cracking pavement. It's holding water and then sediment at the curb line. And you know, you folks all drive this road. You understand that the pavements are in poor condition. And so just a visual representation there. The Public Works crews does come in from time to time and perform patching where needed when that top surface starts breaking up. And then what happens is water pools there and it just kind of exacerbates the issue. So I talked about the pavement condition index just a few slides back. The scores for the neighborhood on average is 52, which is certainly when we start considering that the pavement from top to bottom, if you were to look at a core, which I'll talk about cores shortly, is completely deteriorated. We cannot fix this pavement by doing a mill and overlay. For those people who might know what that is, where we just take off a portion of the pavement and put a new layer over the top. That won't solve this issue because the PCI is too low. We've got too low of a pavement condition index. In your neighborhood, you have concrete curb and gutter. You have storm sewer facilities, which are underground pipes made out of concrete that convey the water that's carried by the curb to, in general, here to the pond at the park, and then on and out to Lake Minnetonka through some other neighborhoods. But there are still areas where the curb is settled and it holds water. It's not draining appropriately to that storm sewer system. So we want to address those issues because what happens is the water pools there. It can infiltrate between the pavement and the concrete, the blacktop and the concrete, and just cause more issues to the subgrade of the road and further break it apart. As far as the utilities, there is no water main, as the residents are aware. There is sanitary sewer, which in general runs down kind of the center of the streets within the neighborhood, and we'll be proposing some minor repairs to that. But in general, the plastic pipe that was installed for the sewer lines is in good shape. The city is on a program, and we televise the inside of the pipes, and so we can review that from the inside and make sure that those are in good shape. So in general, in this neighborhood, we only are proposing at this time some minor repairs to the utilities. I think if you click through once or twice, Mike, we'll just show another couple photos of the existing street showing some of the cracking. and one more is just another part of the road there. And we can click on to the next slide. All right, so in this neighborhood, the proposed method of pavement rehabilitation at this time is full depth pavement removal and replacement. So Jennings Cove is on the newer side of some of the streets or neighborhoods we've been reconstructing, and all that means is that when it was built, it was built with a good amount of gravel base underneath the pavement. And when we obtained cores, which I mentioned I'd get into a little bit, I'll do that now. Part of the project planning is going out with a drill rig and actually taking cores of the pavement, which is a sample of the pavement thickness and then the gravel and the underlying material. That helps us determine what proposed improvement we'll be looking at for each neighborhood. And so based on those cores, this is the proposed method at this time, which is a complete removal of all that deteriorated pavement while leaving the underlying aggregate and gravel, which is in good shape. That's the gravel material in place. And then what'll happen is they'll bring in grading equipment and shape that pavement or that gravel, and then we'll pave new pavement right over the top of it. So it results in a brand new pavement section while saving on cost and length of construction time by leaving the gravel in place. Now to the next slide. All right. So on the right, just for reference, is a picture of a rural street that we repaved in 2019, a little ways to the west of your neighborhood. This was a rural street. Yours is an urban street. Like I mentioned earlier, you've got the concrete curb and gutter on either side. And so the first bullet here is that the street widths are going to remain the same. There are no plans to remove all the concrete curb and widen the street or narrow the street. In general, a lot of that curb is in good shape, and so the street widths are proposed to remain the same at this time. As I mentioned, there is concrete curb though that is settled, holding water, cracked, pitted. We'll be marking those up and then getting those replaced on a spot basis, which means we might repair 50 feet and then we have a good stretch of curb that can stay in place and we can repair some of the other curb. The grades on the road, because we are keeping most of that curb in place, will also not change much. So the vertical grades of the road and then the pitch of the horizontal, I should say, alignment of the road. One thing I'll mention here as well is that one of the big reasons paving the new pavement is helpful is because it restores what we call the crown in the road. So the center of the road is actually quite a bit higher than the curb line. You can maybe somewhat picture that as you look at this picture on the right. And basically what that does is when the rainwater hits it or any sort of surface drainage hits it, it sheet drains right off the road at a good speed, gets to the curb line, or in this case, in this picture, to the ditch, and gets off the road as quickly as possible. As far as restoring behind the curb or where the boulevards are damaged, it's proposed to install sod at those locations at this time. You can go to the next slide, Mike. So we mentioned storm sewer, sanitary sewer. On the right there is a picture of a storm sewer crossing getting replaced. That's what's underneath the road right now. And during the feasibility report, we're going to look and inspect all of the utilities within the area and see what needs replacement. And so when we do get to construction next year, on the picture on the right might be something that you see if there's a crossing or a run of pipe that does need to be replaced. We, in general, will probably not be excavating any of the sanitary sewer, but if we do have to do that, it would be a little bit deeper. You'll see equipment with a trench box shoring the earth so that the workers can work safely in the trench. We analyzed the site for basically hydrology, and so some of the comments I'm expecting maybe tonight is, hey, when it rains, we get a lot of water right here at this intersection and it pools. We actually model the entire site and we'll look at those areas too so we can see in HydroCAD can kind of confirm either what the residents say or make sure that the storm sewer is sized sufficiently to handle certain rain events. Another comment tonight is, this neighborhood's somewhat unique with the park, and there is a trail to the park, and then there's that paved area along the curb line, which is something that city staff wants to address and talk about with the residents on your opinion of that trail or parking area, whatever it would technically be referred to. But we want to hear from the residents on, is that useful for residents? Is it something where you'd rather see turf in that area, and get some feedback and have some back and forth between city staff and the residents in that area. Next slide, Mike. So we have a budget number for the estimated total project cost, which at this time is $763,000. And the surface improvements make up the majority of that. As I mentioned, there's at least at this time not as much planned for the utility improvements. So the total surface improvements are right around $663,000. And you'll notice the asterisk there, but when we do budgeting and we have a concrete curb and gutter neighborhood, we typically assume replacement of about 35% of the concrete curb and gutter. And then I just got finished talking about the park, and so we want to get feedback from the residents about the park, and if there's going to be some trail improvements or changes, we'll have to factor in that cost as well. We can go to the next slide, Mike, to talk about the assessment policy. So for this type of work, the project costs that are associated with the surface and the stormwater, so that's your pavement and your storm sewer, only are assessed at 50%. So any cost associated with the sanitary sewer is not assessed as part of the project. The policy just allows for surface and stormwater. For this neighborhood and in recent projects, the city council and city has assessed each parcel on a unit basis. So everyone in the neighborhood has paid the same unit for their parcel. There's a whole bunch of language on the assessments. There's ability for hardship deferrals, and there is a process to follow. And myself, you could start with me, or we could talk with Brian Grimm, our finance director, about that process if you believe you may qualify. And we'd be happy to just point you in the direction of some more information and talk through that. Typically, now this gets ironed out as the project goes forward, but typically the payment period for the assessment is 20 years. It can be paid in full to reduce interest. And as we go forward with the project, we'll provide more information on the assessment. And the assessment wouldn't come due, or it wouldn't begin until November of 2022. So you'll have some time to get questions answered, and we'll be providing a lot more information as the project goes forward. But if we go to the next page, we can look at what we're estimating for a range of the assessment at this time. We've got kind of the figure on the left, which shows a few things. It shows the range of the assessment we're expecting based on our budget number, and that's from 7,500 to 9,000. It also shows what the assessments were in 2020 and then for the 2021 project, just for reference, so you get an idea of, other neighborhoods that we're reconstructing throughout the city, what kind of assessments are those residents paying. The assessment amounts are impacted by a number of things. Lot density, so if there's a very dense neighborhood with a lot of residents that share the same street, there's more residents to share the cost. If there's larger parcels, there's less people to share the costs in. The scope of work matters a lot. You guys already have the concrete curb and gutter. Some neighborhoods add concrete curb and gutter. And then of course the bid prices. So these projects are publicly bid. We follow that process as well. And so we'll receive, these are estimate numbers, but we will receive the bids from contractors, and that's going to ultimately determine what the cost of the project will be. Go to the next slide, Mike. So I'll talk through some steps in determining that preliminary assessment amount. Now that was the range that was just provided on the last slide that we have now at a budget standpoint. We still need to hear from the residents about, maybe there's a scope change or something that we haven't seen that we're going to hear from you. So we'll know that information as we produce the feasibility report and move into final design. And then an actual number, a figure, will be provided in that feasibility report that the council will review and accept if they choose. So how do we get to that number? We do our initial site visits and meetings with the Public Works Department, who maintain the streets and know them very well. We also perform a topographic survey. We send our survey crews out, and they're going to start to produce a topographic survey of the entire neighborhood area, so we can get accurate XYZ, all the information we need on the location of things. They'll get sizing of structures, sizing of pipes, basically a full survey of the neighborhood to help us hone in on that price. We'll go through preliminary design, where we look at what the improvements need to be, and then we'll put a detailed preliminary construction cost estimate into the feasibility report. And those construction cost estimates, then, knowing the number of benefiting properties, we can compute that preliminary assessment rate, which will be included in the feasibility report. Next page, please, Mike. All right, so project schedule. Here we are tonight at the June 7th neighborhood meeting. And again, this entire PowerPoint and this schedule will be on the website. And there was a website redesign recently led by Allie, and it's very easy to find where the construction web page is. It's right on the main page. So if you feel like revisiting the schedule, you can do that. Over the summer, we'll work towards the feasibility report. That would go to the council on September 7th. We'll go into a public hearing that actually orders this project and orders the preparation of plans and specifications, as I mentioned. We will design over the winter, I guess the late fall and early winter, and then open bids in January of 2022. And now that's a critical timeline. The goal at the city of Minnetrista is to basically be one of the first projects out the door so that we can get the best value for the residents. If a contractor can bid on it early in January, they're not super busy yet bidding on a whole bunch of other projects. And so that's really shown benefit here at the city on our previous projects. And we keep trying to push it earlier and earlier. And I think this is one of my earliest neighborhood meetings. So I'm always happy to see that. We'd go right into awarding the contract in February and get all the logistics squared away with the contractor. We would have another hearing where all the residents are invited to actually have an assessment hearing and declare that final assessment amount. And we'd get into construction in early June, probably right after school lets out, because I'm assuming we have a number of kids in the neighborhood, and then wrap up by the end of summer, depending on the scope of the project. And we'll get into a further construction schedule when we have that information later on next year. Next slide, Mike. I think it's just, oh, there you go. Here we are. One more, please. Yeah, I thought so. So it's just our picture. That's me on the left, Allison Fauski on the right. Our contact information is listed here. It's also on the website. And you can give us, start with me, but a call or an email about either a question or a comment, and we log all those things and make sure to the best of our ability that that's incorporated into the design. So if you want to go to the next slide, Mike, I think that's where we get into the end of my presentation and into kind of the fun part where we open up the floor. Well, first I'll go through a couple of frequently asked questions, but then we open up the floor for just some dialogue back and forth between the residents and the staff. So we'll also post frequently asked questions on the website, but some of the main ones I do like to get out of the way are driveway access. And so for driveway access during construction, in general, you'll always have access to your driveway at the beginning and end of each day. And most likely the majority of it, you'll have it most of the time. It's really when the work is occurring right in front of your driveway with a paver or an excavator that you may not be able to drive into your driveway, but we'll be communicating that access. And then of course, if the concrete is replaced in front of your driveway, then there'll be a period of time where that concrete needs to cure, where we will communicate with you that you'll have to park on the street and not drive over the concrete. One more, yeah, there we go. Lawn restoration will be with sod. Trees, if they are close to the roadway and going to be impacted by utilities, and they're within the right of way, they may need to be removed upon kind of preliminary investigation of the neighborhood. Not anticipating a number of trees being removed. A lot of the construction is generally going to stay, you know, within the street, and then in some specific areas for storm sewer, it might go outside the back of curb a little bit. There are going to be a lot of impacts to sprinkler systems. I know that area is heavily irrigated, invisible dog fences. We're used to disturbing those. Typically, folks install those right up to the back of curb. They're going to get hit with the work when we do curb replacements. We make sure that's built into the contract and that repairs are completed. We'll have more communication with residents. We just ask you mark them with a flag, and then if you can turn that zone off for when construction is actively occurring, that helps keep things dry for when they're working in the area. If there are special needs, lots of times we have graduation parties right around June. We want to hear about those so we can talk about early if there is going to be a schedule conflict, or if there's something, if we can work on a different part of the project area while you have your party. We'll do our best to accommodate that. And mail and garbage service will be maintained the whole construction period. You'll just bring your garbage out to the end of the driveway like you normally do. If it can't be accessed by the waste collectors, then the contractor will actually move it to where it can get picked up. And then your mail will likely be on a temporary mailbox during construction. So there'll be a big bank of mailboxes, and that's where you're going to grab your mail during construction. And that is because the delivery driver doesn't typically like to drive on the gravel surface. So I'm going to let Mayor Whalen step in now if she wants to add anything to the presentation, and then I think we'll jump right into questions, Mayor.
Okay, Adam, we're going to try to figure out which one the mayor is, so
Oh, okay.
this could be good. Trying to unmute.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yep, we can
Yes,
hear
we
you.
can.
All right, great. All right, thank you, Adam. So I apologize for that earlier. My Verizon, it kind of vacillates between 1 and 2 towers, and sometimes it's just not enough. But I just want to say welcome everybody that's here. I think we have quite a few callers. So we will, so what this open house is for is obviously give you information, but also get information and feedback from you. So I think we'll start out, and it's just going to kind of be, if you have a question, you're just going to have to kind of pipe up and ask your question and make your comments, and we'll try and answer them as best we possibly can. So with that, anybody?
I have a question. I have a couple questions.
So could you
hear me
please,
okay?
Yep, could you please state your name and home address for everybody that wants
My
to
name
speak?
is Pete Galvin, and the home address is 1115 Cove Circle, and I'm also the current president of the Homeowners Association. Well, first of all, thanks for doing this, and I'm sure everyone who's watching and listening appreciates the time that you guys have put into this so far, so thank you. I think the general sentiment in the neighborhood is that this project is long overdue, so we certainly welcome it. I would, also welcome anyone to chime in if that is not the case. My couple questions. You've answered a lot of my preliminary questions going into this with the presentation, so thank you. As far as costs and things like that, I'm curious as to why Jennings Cove Road isn't included in the scope of work, and also some of the cost sharing, being that it's their only thoroughfare in and out. I mean, I guess it makes sense that you can't, if you're not repaving that entire road, that they're not assessed accordingly. But I'm just curious as to why, the initial documents that we were mailed, it looks like it indicated that Jennings Cove Road was part of the scope of work, and now it's not, according to your presentation. So if you could just maybe elaborate on that a little bit. And then as far as the park goes, it would be my other question. I don't know how any improvements to the park, be it the paths, the playground structures themselves, or the courts there, if that's something that we are assessed on. And I guess I would, if that is the case, curious as to how much, as a percentage that we might be assessed, given that the park is used by plenty of Minnetrista residents, outside of this neighborhood. So I guess those are my two questions. You mentioned in your presentation, if I could just finish real quick, regarding the park, I don't think we have a really good feel for whether or not the path, the pathway that's along the curb, whether or not that's something that neighbors like or don't like at this point. However, we can certainly do our part to survey the neighborhood and get a better feel for that. With that said, I would welcome your answers or input at this point.
Thank you, Pete. Maybe I could answer that second question that you had about the parks. The
Sure.
Park improvements are not assessed. In
Okay.
fact, later on at our 7 o'clock meeting, we will be having a discussion exactly about that park, but any improvements would be coming out of our park dedication fund. And I would assume, I'm making an assumption, but I would assume the trail would come out of park dedication funds as well. So I'm going to hand this back to Adam regarding the construction of your first question. Adam?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Pete, for the questions. So Jennings Cove Road, that piece that's not on the map here that heads a little further south, was constructed a little bit later than the other streets within the development. And at the time of the ratings in 2017, it had recently been seal coated, which is a maintenance effort that can be done to pavements to help extend their useful life. So that street was seal coated. It's also about 12 or 13 or 14 years newer, I believe. And so its rating is higher than the other streets within the neighborhood. And for that reason, it's not included or proposed for this project, because we believe that pavement has some more useful life in it. And though it's in the same area, we don't feel that it's an appropriate time to remove that pavement if it still has some good life left in it. So that's why it's not included. Did you want to jump in? So you're reaching for the mic there. Otherwise, I'll talk on, in terms of them chipping in on the project costs. We do address this question often. It comes up on a lot of projects because of the nature of the lakes, I think it is really, where, the access to the neighborhood's usually off a county road, and then, there might be some more roads as it snakes further back and towards the lake. It does actually come up quite a bit here in town. And the policy, or not the policy, but the practice that the city's done is when it's a road that's not being improved, but the access road to it is being improved, but that access road is already paved, it's an urbanized section. Those folks that have to drive along it to get to their driveway will not contribute to the assessable amount. When their street that is adjacent to their property, that their driveway accesses onto, is improved, that's when they would pay an assessment when that street is repaired. Now, if there's a situation where we've got a gravel road that is getting reconstructed and is going to be paved, and there are streets that come off of that gravel road that folks use the gravel road to access their paved road. And now I might be getting a little complicated here, but the city's practice has been to assess a portion of the project cost for that scenario where these folks were driving on a gravel road to get to their paved road. The gravel road's now been improved and paved, so they chip in an assessment amount that is a fraction of the full assessment amount. So hopefully that provides a little background on why they won't be contributing to the assessments and why they're not included for removal of all the pavement at this time.
Okay. Thank you.
Did we get your, and we got your second question. I appreciate that offer, and if you wouldn't mind, maybe at a board meeting or at your next HOA meeting to just get a flavor of the neighborhood, or
Just so we're talking about the exact same thing. What are we calling there's the path within the park itself, and then there's the portion along the road. Are we calling that all the path, or is there better terminology so I know that we're talking about the same thing?
I think thank you for asking that we should clarify there is the path to access the playground, and that can be on the table too, depending on the pavement condition there. The thing that city staff is considering, is this a useful benefit, because it is pavement, it will degrade over time, is that I want to call it a paved shoulder behind the curb. Yeah. along the radius. That's the one we really want to know. Is that a benefit to the neighborhood? Are people using that? And if so, we can talk about that. If it's something that doesn't get used and should be green space, we can talk about that too.
Right. Okay. Yeah, we can do that in pretty short order and get back to you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pete. Okay, anybody else have questions or comments?
This is Bruce Borden. I'm at 840 Jennings Cove Road, and I also second Pete's comment about thank you for all the effort that you're putting into this, and all the work and all the preparation and having this hearing. We appreciate that. I just wanted to clarify, when you say that the Jennings Cove Road is not getting reworked, I guess that's a concern of mine because it does go right in front of my home. And as you go, in fact, I walk a lot down the road, and maybe, 40, 50 feet down the road near the park, there's a strip that's about 8 to 10 feet long and 2 or 3 inches deep in parts right now that hasn't been filled in. So I'm wondering if you're talking about that portion of the road, or as you get up towards the top of the hill and go down towards the lake where it dead ends into a circle. That part I know was sealed not too long ago, but I don't believe the road in front of us, maybe it was done 12 years ago, I don't recall that, but it's in pretty rough shape in front of our home out to the entranceway.
Yeah, thank you, Bruce.
Bruce, I'm going to cut you off real quick and answer this for him. The area that we're talking about omitting is not your part of Jennings Cove Road. It's essentially where the Jennings Woods neighborhood access starts.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry for that confusion.
That's what I was thinking, but I just wanted to confirm that.
Yep. I'm out.
Good question.
And I just had one follow-up, not related to that, but just a totally separate question. I'm curious in terms of the care of the road once it's put in. I know a lot of times there's gravel. I don't know if it's granite, crushed granite, or what's put in these roads to make them last longer. But it seems to me I've read information about studies that have been done that said when they do put that type of gravel in, it doesn't necessarily extend the life of the road. So I was just curious if that was in the plans at some point, 5-10 years down the road, to put that in an effort to try to prolong the road's survival, or not, or what's the plan?
Yeah.
That's a good question, Bruce. So we've changed a little bit in the last few years due to scientific reports. And what we've done is we've actually increased the bituminous wear course by about 1.5 to 2 inches. So in other words, your asphalt is going to be thicker than what it used to be. So we've changed our standards, and that's supposed to extend the life significantly without having to do what is called a seal coating. And Adam, can you just quickly verify that or weigh in on that?
Yep. Yeah. Thank you, Madam Mayor. And thanks for the question, Bruce. Our new pavement section is 4.5 inches. It used to be thinner, and that was adopted maybe a year and a half ago, or maybe a little bit longer, and we're starting to incorporate it into projects now. So Bruce, I think your question was about the gravel, which I can get to, but we increased the pavement thickness. That provides a lot more strength for the roadway, which is what it's all about, because it just takes repeated loadings, wheel loadings, traffic loadings. We've got FedEx and UPS coming to the neighborhood, I'm sure, 5 times a day. So that's why we've increased the pavement thickness. And then the gravel underneath, pretty much in all instances for road construction.
Adam, I think Ms. Bruce was referring to the seal coating gravel on top is what we used to do. It looks
Exactly.
like gravel.
Okay.
Yeah. And we used to do that, and we're not planning on doing that right now because of the thickness of the pavement has been improved and is stronger and will last longer.
That's great.
Is that it?
I appreciate that.
Okay.
Yes.
Thanks for
Madam
clarifying.
Mayor, that's exactly what I was asking. And yeah, I was just concerned if we're putting that gravel on it and it wasn't necessary or didn't prolong the life of the road.
Got
Why
it.
bother is, I guess, my opinion, but
Thanks
Thank
for
you for that.
clarifying.
All right. Thank you, Bruce. Anybody else have comments or questions? We have quite a few callers online, and sometimes it's hard to kind of weigh in, but you're just going to have to jump in here. It's an open house.
A little easier in person, I think, probably to speak up.
It is.
Soon enough.
Hi there, this is Karen Dent, and my camera's not working for whatever reason. I'm at 1130 Cove Circle and the current vice president of the Homeowners Association. First question is of the assessment. If you don't pay it up front in full, what is the interest rate that's applied?
Brian, maybe you could answer that question.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Mayor. And so based on our assessment policy, it ends up being whatever the current rate of our debt issuance or interest rate, which interest rates, I think everyone knows, are pretty low right now. Just for example, on our current 2021 projects, we'd be looking at about a 3.25%. And that even includes, basically per our policy, some of the administrative time and effort that goes into the project. So it'd be roughly, I mean, as long as interest rates don't, skyrocket in the next year, which I'm not really, I think they're going to be low for a while, is my prediction. You'd probably be looking in the 3.25–3.5% range. At least less than 4% would be my guess right now.
Okay, thank you. And then the other question is the path along the park. If we decided that for whatever reason it wasn't being used or unnecessary, what do you visualize that looking like? Would it just be sodded, or what are the thoughts?
Yep, that's our initial thought. We would just make that a grass green space, a grass boulevard.
Okay.
The reason being is, we can replace the pavement and manage it as, an asset of the city's infrastructure, and happy to do that. If it's boulevard, it's a lot less long-term maintenance, especially if it's not getting used. We don't need more infrastructure that would deteriorate and cost the taxpayers in the city money over time if it's not being used.
Got it. Okay. All right, just curious. Thank you so much. That was really helpful.
Thank you
for tonight.
Thank you, Karen. Good questions. Anybody else? Questions
Madam Mayor?
or comments? Yes.
Hi, this is Allison Fauski. I appreciate all the residents who called in to the meeting tonight. It's great to get feedback and the questions. One of the things that I just wanted to mention to the residents, if you're out walking, a couple neighborhoods to your east is Minneapolis Avenue, and there will be a street improvement project there later this summer. And the reason I mention it is that while the pavement reclamation portion of the Minneapolis Avenue project is similar to to, somewhat similar to what we're proposing to the Jennings Cove area, there is a significant amount of utility work going on Minneapolis Avenue. And so I just wanted to mention that because I don't want folks to get a misconceived notion of what the project would look like for Jennings Cove. The Minneapolis Avenue is a very heavy utility improvement project. So you're certainly seeing a very different project that will be going on Minneapolis Avenue versus what's proposed in Jennings Cove.
Thank you, Allison. That's a good point. Nowhere near the disruption that the Minneapolis Avenue people will be experiencing, unfortunately. However, the end result will look somewhat similar. They will have curb and gutter and asphalt paving. So at the end, if you want to go over and take a look, you can. All right. Thank you, Allison. Good comment. Anybody else? Questions about the assessments or any specific thoughts, areas of concern? Okay, I have, I'm going to ask the council, do you have any questions of staff? I'll start with Pam.
I don't have any questions at this time. I think Adam did a great job as usual with his presentation and answered my questions that I would have had. Good job, Adam.
Thank you.
And I'll go on to John.
Agree with what Pam said. Good presentation. I like the earliness we get started on this so the neighbors can be aware of it. They can, if they weren't able to attend today, listen in or get feedback from the ladies and gentlemen who are here. I think this should be pretty straightforward, other than replacing parts of the curb and gutter. For those of us that have seen some of these, this should be a fairly, I wouldn't say simple, but should be fairly straightforward. So we look forward, hopefully, to being able to improve your streets. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Anne.
I don't have any questions. Once again, Adam, excellent presentation. Thank you.
All right. And Kathleen?
No question, just more of a comment. I'm looking at for the park, the Jennings Park thing. In that report for tonight's meeting, it says new trails. I'm assuming that's just the trail around the park then, Adam?
I'm actually looking forward to the conversation tonight. I'll be at the meeting. I'm not fully aware. I think perhaps planning or maybe Gary or Allison have a little more knowledge of what the conversation is going to be tonight. So we can certainly discuss that, and if it needs to be incorporated into this project, we'll do so.
Yeah, no, it says in the report that the new trails is already included for tonight. So I just want to make sure that, one, the residents know that we're already talking about redoing the trails when we fix the park this summer. So just making sure that which trail we're talking about doing for the park versus for the neighborhood improvement.
Right. Well, that was the question I believe that Pete had. Which trail? They want to make sure they understand which trail. So I think it's the outer trail that we probably won't need to discuss tonight because we need feedback from the residents. Does that kind of get you closer to an answer, Kathleen?
No, I understood that part. It was more that the budget for tonight for the park to be fixed has new trails in it. So we've already talked about doing the trail around the immediate park. That it was just more clarifying that the park trail by the park is going to be covered with the park improvement.
Okay. Yeah.
That's it.
Okay. So good comments. Just a couple questions, Adam. And this has kind of come up because of some questions by residents and other street improvement projects. The electrical, that's all underground in Jennings Cove, is that correct? Maybe I could ask Pete that since you live there.
Yep.
Okay. So that's not an issue because sometimes that comes up. People say, well, why can't we put the electrical lines underground since we're going to be doing this project? So that's not an issue. The other question I would have is when Jennings Cove was built back in 88, I think, 86, 7, somewhere in the mid to late 80s, the city didn't have any water lines going into that or down 151. We now have a water line that goes all the way down 151. Is there any desire by the residents to hook up to city water?
No.
That would be a question by Pete, maybe to Pete.
Zero interest.
None.
I
Okay.
for
All right.
everyone.
Okay.
Thank you, though.
Good to know. I just
Yes.
thought I should ask, just in case.
No,
So,
that's
all
okay.
right.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. All right. I can't think of any other questions at this time. And yeah, there are no other questions, then we will be done with the open house. You can always call staff if you come up with, as Adam said, he had, I think, his contact information up. If you have additional questions that you think of later on, please feel free to give Adam a call and ask them. And also, Adam, then please share those with us so we're aware of what different concerns or questions may come up. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, bye.
And with that, then, if there is a motion to adjourn, we can adjourn our work session.
This is Ann, motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Ann, and I believe Pam seconded that. So all those in favor will say, thank you. So all those in favor will signify with aye. Pam?
Aye.
Ann?
Aye.
Kathleen?
Aye.
And John?
Aye.
Thank you. We are adjourned, and we will see or talk to you all at 7 o'clock.